Welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be looking at lateral thinking. You sent over some excerpts from Edward de Bono's book, Lateral Thinking, a textbook of creativity, and it seemed like a really great opportunity to kind of look at how to shake up our thinking and how to be more creative.
Yeah, no, de Bono is like really he's the OG when
Yeah.
it comes to teaching thinking as a skill.
Yeah.
Not just like what to think,
Right.
but how to do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
So the goal today is to not just learn about lateral thinking,
Yeah.
but to actually kind of start to think differently ourselves.
Absolutely.
And de Bono kicks this book off by making this distinction between what he calls vertical thinking and lateral thinking.
Right.
So what's the difference?
So vertical thinking is kind of like, imagine your mind is like a landscape that's been shaped by rainfall over time.
Okay.
The rain represents our thoughts, and as they flow, they carve out these familiar paths, and that's vertical thinking. It's great for building on existing knowledge,
Right.
but it can also keep us stuck in those same old ruts.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then how do we break free of those ruts? What do we do?
That's where lateral thinking comes in.
Right.
It's about shaking up that mental landscape, deliberately restructuring those patterns to open up
Okay.
new possibilities.
Okay.
De Bono has this great analogy to illustrate this.
Okay.
He talks about a monkey
Okay.
reaching into a jar to grab some nuts.
Uh-huh.
The monkey gets its fist around the nuts, but then it can't get its hand out of the narrow opening.
Oh, I see where this is going. It's trapped by its own success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what can happen with vertical thinking.
Okay.
We get so focused on building on what we already know that we can miss out on entirely new ways of seeing things.
Yeah. Got it. So lateral thinking is about being a more flexible, adaptable monkey who can let go of those nuts. Find a new way out of the jar.
Yes.
Sign me up. But how do we actually put this into practice?
Yeah, so
How do we do this?
a bunch of different... De Bono lays out several key principles and techniques.
Okay.
One of the most fundamental ones is challenging assumptions.
Okay.
So, de Bono tells this story about encountering a flower seller with a huge bunch of carnations selling for a suspiciously low price.
Right.
He assumed it must be the end of the day.
Yeah.
The seller was trying to clear out his stock.
Yeah, sure.
So he goes to pay, and the seller just detaches a small bunch from the huge one.
Oh.
His assumption about the situation was totally off.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So is that the first step of lateral thinking? Is to just question everything, question all of our assumptions about the world?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's so easy to get blinded by our assumptions.
Right.
Questioning those assumptions is crucial.
Got it.
For breaking free from limitations.
Okay, so challenge assumptions, check.
Yes.
What's another tool in the lateral thinking toolkit?
Well, de Bono really emphasizes using the question why, but in a very specific way.
Oh, okay.
In lateral thinking, why isn't about seeking a single right answer. It's about generating discomfort with easy, obvious explanations.
So it's less about patching up the holes in our understanding and more about poking new holes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So, imagine someone asks, why is a blackboard black?
Okay.
The typical response would be like, because it makes the white chalk show up better.
Right.
Logical enough.
Wow.
But a lateral thinker might ask, why does it have to be a board at all?
Whoa.
It completely changes the framing.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on the blackboard, we're thinking about its purpose, which could lead to all sorts of new ideas for visual communication.
Yeah. It's a subtle shift, but it really does change things.
And that's the power of asking why in a lateral way.
Yeah.
It helps us break free from those limiting assumptions and consider a wider range of possibilities.
Okay, I'm already feeling like my brain is getting a little bit more flexible.
Good.
So what's another technique that we can use? What can we do to...
Well, de Bono talks about a technique called fractionation and reassembly.
Okay.
This one is about taking a situation or a problem and breaking it down into parts.
Okay.
Then putting those parts back together in new ways.
So kind of like taking a puzzle apart and putting it back together in a different way, but with ideas.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
Okay.
But de Bono really emphasizes the importance of making what he calls false divisions.
Okay.
Instead of breaking things down along the most obvious lines,
right,
we try to make cuts that don't necessarily make sense at first.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. So it's like forcing yourself to see the familiar
Yeah.
in a completely new light. So like instead of neatly separating a square into two rectangles,
Right.
you might slice it diagonally or
Exactly.
even into some sort of irregular shape.
Exactly. The goal is to break free from those predictable patterns and open up new possibilities.
Yeah, okay. This is making me want to go and get some construction paper and start like cutting things up and moving it around. Okay, so what other mind-bending techniques does De Bono have up his sleeve?
Well, one that might sound kind of counterintuitive at first is what he calls the reversal method.
Oh.
It involves simply reversing a situation to see where it leads.
I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Okay, so one example De Bono gives is reversing the phrase policeman directing traffic to traffic directing the policeman.
Okay.
You see?
I see what you mean. Yeah, suddenly we're not just picturing a policeman who's controlling the flow of traffic, we're imagining the traffic itself.
Yes.
As a force that the policeman is responding to,
Yes, it's
very different.
Very different perspective. Yeah. And this technique can be especially helpful for overcoming the fear of being wrong.
Right.
Which is a major blocker for creative thinking.
Yeah.
When we reverse things, we kind of give ourselves permission to explore ideas that might seem illogical or even absurd at first.
Yeah, I like that. It's like a mental get-out-of-jail-free card to just sort of play with these unconventional ideas without judgment.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered challenging assumptions, asking why in a lateral way, fractionation and reassembly, and the reversal method. So what else, what other techniques does De Bono have for us? I'm ready to really push my brain even further.
So one of my favorites is random stimulation.
Random stimulation.
Yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. Okay. Using random words or images to just kind of jolt our thinking out of those predictable ruts.
So how do we do that? Do we just like pick up a dictionary?
Yeah.
And pick a random word?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, you use a dictionary or even just a list of random words. Pick a word at random, and then you see how you can connect it to the problem or situation you're thinking about.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
It might seem completely unrelated, but that's the whole point.
So we have to kind of embrace those like seemingly illogical connections to see where they might go.
Yeah, because that's where the creative sparks might fly.
Okay, so give me an example of that.
Okay, so De Bono gives a great example of using the random word noose to think about the housing shortage.
Noose and the housing shortage. Now that's a stretch.
Yeah.
How does that even, like, how did that go anywhere?
Right. It seems completely unrelated, but by forcing that connection, people came up with some really creative ideas like adjustable roundhouses that could be expanded as needed. Or even like exchangeable housing units that could be traded like cars.
Wow. So it acts as like a springboard.
Exactly.
A mental springboard.
Exactly. Oh. Yeah, it's like giving our brains a playful nudge to see what they come up with.
I love that. I'm definitely going to try that one.
Yeah.
So we've got challenging assumptions, the lateral why, fractionation and reassembly, the reversal method, random stimulation. This is great. This is like a mental gym for creative thinking.
It is, yeah.
What else? What else is in De Bono's arsenal?
So De Bono also talks a lot about the importance of language in lateral thinking. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay. I'm all ears. How does language play into all of this?
So he argues that labels, while essential for communication,
they can also trap us in rigid thinking patterns.
It makes sense, yeah. It's like those sorting boxes for ping pong balls.
Yes.
Once you've labeled a box white, you might try and force a slightly grayish ball into that category, even if it doesn't quite fit.
That's a great analogy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he suggests that we consciously try to express ourselves without using those familiar labels to force ourselves to see things in a fresh light.
So it's like a mental detox from those overused categories.
Exactly. And then he introduces this fascinating concept called PO, which stands for provocative operator.
PO, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
What is that? How does that work? What is a provocative operator?
So think of PO as a mental get-out-of-jail-free card.
All right.
It allows us to entertain ideas that would normally be dismissed as impossible, illogical, or even ridiculous. So instead of just shutting an idea down immediately, with a no. You can say PO. And
exactly.
And then sort of see where it goes.
Yeah, it's about suspending judgment and giving those unconventional ideas a chance to breathe.
So give me an example. I'm dying to see PO in action.
Okay, so imagine you're trying to come up with a solution for traffic congestion.
Okay.
A traditional approach might focus on adding more roads or improving public transportation.
Right, sure.
But with PO, you could say something like, PO cars are banned from city centers during rush hour.
Whoa, okay.
Do you see?
Yeah.
It forces us to think outside the box about alternative solutions.
Right, like maybe everyone works from home or
exactly, or new modes of transportation.
Yeah.
PO is all about jolting our thinking out of those familiar ruts, opening up a world of possibilities.
It's like shaking up a snow globe and letting all those things fly around.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Challenging assumptions, using why differently, fractionation and reassembly, the reversal method, random stimulation, dropping labels, and now this powerful PO tool. Is there anything else we should know about applying lateral thinking?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is lateral thinking. It's not about replacing logic or reason.
Yeah.
It's about expanding our mental toolkit, giving us more options when we encounter challenges in any area of life.
It's like we're adding a whole new set of mental tools to our workshop, so we're not throwing away the hammers and the screwdrivers.
Exactly.
We're just adding a power drill.
Exactly.
At a laser level and all that kind of stuff.
And Bono really emphasizes that, it's not about finding the right answer.
Right.
It's about exploring a wider range of possibilities.
Okay.
He says, lateral thinking is not a magic formula. It is an attitude of mind. It is a willingness to generate different perceptions and to use information in a provocative manner.
Okay, I like that. So it's less about following a certain set of rules and more about cultivating a mindset of playfulness and curiosity and not being afraid to experiment and explore.
Absolutely.
Even if that means...
Even if it means being wrong sometimes.
Being wrong sometimes, right.
Exactly.
And we've seen from all the different techniques that we've talked about that can involve everything from, asking why in a new way to embracing the power of PO to even just using random words as mental springboards.
Right.
I'm feeling pretty inspired to start applying this stuff.
Yeah, well, and remember, any skill, lateral thinking, takes practice.
Right.
So the more you use these techniques, the more natural they'll become. And the more you'll be able to tap into that creative potential that's within all of us.
So, listener, I hope this deep dive has sparked some new ideas and given you a fresh perspective on how to approach challenges and unlock your own creative thinking.
Yeah.
And, don't be afraid to challenge assumptions. Ask why, even when you think you know the answer. And embrace the power of PO.
Yes.
Who knows what brilliant breakthroughs you might discover.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on this adventure into the world of lateral thinking.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Yes.
Keep those mental gears turning.